Rome was a city that feared no man. From the Alps to Africa, it crushed kingdoms, enslaved nations, and crowned emperors. Yet, there was once a man who made Rome tremble, a mind so brilliant, so relentless that even centuries later, his name echoes as the embodiment of defiance. His name was Hannibal Barca. This is not just the story of a war. It is the story of obsession, revenge, and the unbreakable will of a man who dared to challenge the might of Rome. When Hannibal swore eternal hatred against the Republic as a child, the fate of millions was sealed. What followed would be one of the most extraordinary military campaigns in human history, one that almost ended Rome itself. This is the tale of the greatest enemy Rome has ever faced. In the sun-drenched land of Carthage, a young boy stood before his father, Hannibal Barca, a general still scarred by Rome's victory in the First Punic War. The boy's eyes burned with the same fire that once fueled Carthage's empire. Hamilcar brought him to the altar and demanded an oath. With his hand over the sacred flame, Hannibal swore to be Rome's eternal enemy. The boy's voice trembled, but his heart did not. From that moment, his destiny was sealed. The oath would define his life, his wars, and his legend. Carthage had lost one war, but in that moment, it gained a weapon, and that weapon was Hannibal Barca. Years passed, and Hannibal grew into a soldier under his father's shadow. He studied tactics, geography, and psychology, not just how to win, but how to break an enemy's will. He watched how Rome fought, learned how they thought, and vowed to strike where they least expected. When his father died, Hannibal's brother-in-law Hasdrubal took command, but soon Hannibal would rise. His ambition was unmatched, his charisma undeniable. The Carthaginian army adored him, and the people saw him as their savior. At only 26 years old, Hannibal was chosen as commander of Carthage's army in Iberia. The soldiers cheered his name, Barca, the Thunderbolt. His eyes turned northward to the lands of Rome. But to strike the Republic, he needed to defy not only Rome's armies but nature itself. And so began one of history's most daring campaigns, the March to Italy. The year was 218 BCE. Hannibal's army, 90,000 men, 12,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants, stood ready to cross the Alps. The Roman Senate believed no sane man would attempt such madness, but Hannibal was not sane. He was brilliant. Snow, ice, and death surrounded them as they climbed higher into the mountains. Men froze, elephants fell, and the path vanished into mist. Yet Hannibal never turned back. He rallied his men at every turn, telling them that on the other side lay the heart of their enemy. For 15 brutal days they fought blizzards, ambushes, and starvation. By the time they emerged, only a fraction remained, but they stood on Italian soil. Rome had never expected an invasion from the north. The hunter had become the hunted. The Alps had broken armies before, but Hannibal's army survived through sheer will and leadership. Every man who lived became a legend hardened by nature's fury. Rome was shocked, scrambling to raise legions. The Republic had underestimated the young Carthaginian, and that mistake would cost them dearly. The first Roman blood was about to be spilled at the Trebia River. The Trebia River ran cold with winter snow when Hannibal lured the Roman legions into his first great trap. Consul Sempronius Longus believed he was facing a tired enemy, but Hannibal had chosen the battlefield with precision. His troops feigned retreat, drawing the Romans across the freezing river. As they charged, Hannibal's hidden cavalry struck from the flanks. From the woods, Mago, Hannibal's brother, unleashed an ambush that shattered the Roman lines. It was slaughter. Thousands of Romans drowned or were cut down in the icy waters. The survivors fled in panic, spreading fear across the Republic. Hannibal had defeated his first Roman army in Italy. But this was only the beginning. He was not fighting for land or loot, he was fighting to break Rome's spirit. And he was succeeding. In the Senate, fear turned to rage. They called Hannibal a demon, a monster, an invader from hell. But in Carthage, songs were sung of his triumph. He had crossed the impossible and crushed Rome's pride. And still, he had not yet faced his greatest test. That test would come at Lake Trasimene. Mist rolled over Lake Trasimene as the Roman army marched blindly into history's largest ambush. Hannibal's men lay hidden in the hills, waiting for the signal. When it came, chaos erupted from every side. The Romans were trapped between the hills and the lake. They had nowhere to run, nowhere to fight as one. It was not a battle, it was an execution. Within hours, 15,000 Romans were dead. The rest were captured or drowned. Hannibal's mastery of deception had turned nature into his ally. He was now the most feared man in the ancient world. Even Rome's allies began to waver. Could the Republic really survive him? News reached Rome like thunder in the Forum. The people demanded protection, and the Senate appointed Fabius Maximus as dictator. But Fabius was cautious. He refused to meet Hannibal in open battle. He shadowed him, harassing his supply lines, earning the nickname Concator, the delayer. Hannibal laughed. Rome was now playing his game. Fabius Maximus knew that direct confrontation meant death. He studied Hannibal's movements, watching his patterns like a predator observing prey. But unlike others, Fabius refused to strike too soon. Instead, he starved Hannibal of supplies, destroyed crops, and used time as his weapon. Hannibal, for the first time, found himself without an enemy willing to fight. The war had turned into a deadly chess match. Hannibal mocked Fabius, calling him a coward, but in truth, he respected him. For every great warrior knows the power of patience. But Rome grew restless. The Senate and people wanted blood, not delay. They believed Fabius was too cautious and replaced him. The new commanders were eager for glory, blind to Hannibal's genius. They would soon pay the price at Cannae. As Fabius faded from command, Hannibal's scouts brought news. 2 massive Roman armies were gathering. He smiled, for he had foreseen this. The Romans believed numbers would crush him. But in war, numbers mean nothing when facing the mind of a master. Hannibal prepared to carve his name into eternity. The stage was set for his masterpiece, the Battle of Cannae. On a dusty plain near Cannae in 216 BCE, the greatest battle of the ancient world unfolded. Rome had assembled over 80,000 men, their largest army ever. Hannibal had less than half that, yet he stood calm, watching the Roman legions march like a red tide. He placed his weakest troops in the center, his strongest on the flanks. As the Romans advanced, they fell right into his design. The trap was perfect. As the center bent inward, the Romans believed victory was near. But Hannibal's cavalry struck from behind, sealing the trap. The legions were surrounded, encircled, crushed together with no room to fight. For hours the slaughter continued. By sunset, 50,000 Romans lay dead. It was annihilation on a scale never before seen. Cannae broke more than just armies. It broke Rome's soul. Entire legions vanished. Senators fell in battle, and the Republic itself shook. Cities in Italy began defecting to Hannibal's side. He had achieved the impossible, the destruction of Rome's military supremacy, but instead of marching on Rome, he hesitated. That single decision would haunt him forever. After Cannae, Rome lay open. The road to the city was unguarded. Hannibal's officers begged him to march on the capital. But Hannibal refused. He knew Rome's walls were strong, and his siege equipment was gone. He needed allies, not ruins. So instead, he waited, hoping Rome's allies would join him. But Rome did not break. Inside the city, panic turned to resolve. The Senate swore never to negotiate with Hannibal. They ordered new legions, even arming slaves and debtors. Rome's resilience stunned the world. For the first time, Hannibal realized he faced not just soldiers, but a nation of iron will. The wolf had been wounded, not killed. Carthage, meanwhile, offered little help. The politicians were divided, jealous of Hannibal's fame. They sent few reinforcements, focusing instead on defending Africa. Hannibal was left isolated in Italy, surrounded by enemies and betrayed by his own city. He had won every battle, but was losing the war, and time was beginning to turn against him. The war dragged on for years, and Italy became a graveyard of armies. Hannibal roamed the countryside like a ghost, undefeated yet unable to strike the final blow. Rome adopted Fabius's strategy: again, avoid battle, bleed Hannibal slowly. They burned fields, ambushed supply lines, and trapped him in a land of famine. His men starved, his elephants died, yet he fought on. His legend only grew darker. The people of Italy, once in awe of him, began to fear him. To them, Hannibal became a shadow that brought death wherever he went. Villages were burned, alliances collapsed, and hope dwindled. Still, Hannibal's spirit never faltered. He trained new recruits, forged alliances with local tribes, and struck when least expected. But Rome was adapting faster. The Republic had learned from its pain. New generals rose, inspired by Fabius and hardened by defeat. They studied Hannibal's tactics and mirrored them. Slowly, the hunter became the hunted. Rome was not just fighting for victory, it was fighting for survival. And survival breeds monsters. From the ashes of defeat, Rome found a new hero, Publius Cornelius Scipio, later called Africanus. As a young man, he had survived Cannae. He saw the destruction firsthand and vowed to end Hannibal's reign. Scipio was brilliant, ambitious, and daring the Roman answer to Hannibal. He studied his enemy's strategies, learning every weakness, every habit, and he would use them all. Scipio began his campaign in Spain, striking at Carthage's base of power. He captured Carthago Nova, rallied Iberian tribes, and cut Hannibal's supply lines. Carthage finally began to panic. For the first time, Hannibal was fighting on two fronts, one in Italy, one in Spain. Scipio's rise was unstoppable. The tides of war were shifting. By 204 BCE, Scipio had grown bold enough to invade Africa itself. He forced Carthage to recall Hannibal from Italy after 15 years of conquest. The duel that destiny had prepared was finally at hand. The two greatest generals of their age would face each other, not in Italy, but on African soil. At a place called Zama, when Hannibal returned to Carthage, he was not the same man who had crossed the Alps. His hair was gray, his eyes sharper, his body scarred. He had seen empires burn, armies die, and fate mock him. Carthage welcomed him as a hero, yet whispered blame behind his back. The politicians who had abandoned him now demanded salvation. Hannibal said nothing. He knew what had to be done. He rebuilt his army with whatever men he could muster. Farmers, veterans, mercenaries, they all came to serve under the legend. But Carthage's heart was no longer strong. It was a city divided, weakened by greed and fear. Still, Hannibal's presence ignited hope. The lion was not dead yet. Across the sea, Scipio marched through Africa with precision. He burned Carthaginian camps, turned allies against them, and closed in fast. Hannibal rode out to meet him on the plains of Zama. Two titans, two philosophies of war, about to decide the fate of the ancient world. One represented genius and vengeance, the other discipline and destiny. The morning sun blazed over the desert plain as the armies formed ranks. Hannibal's war elephants stood ready, their tusks gleaming with iron tips. Across the field, Scipio's legions waited in silence. The air was thick with history. For the first time, Rome faced its greatest enemy in open battle, and only one would walk away. When the horns sounded, Hannibal unleashed his elephants, but Scipio had prepared for this. The legions opened their ranks, creating lanes for the beasts to pass through. The animals panicked, turning back and trampling Hannibal's own troops. Then came the Roman counterattack. The ground shook under iron discipline and years of vengeance. Zama became Hannibal's undoing. The Carthaginian lines broke. His veterans fought like lions, but Rome's numbers and training prevailed. Hannibal rode among his men, rallying, refusing to flee. But even he could not stop the collapse. By dusk, Carthage lay defeated. Rome had finally conquered its nightmare. After Zama, Carthage surrendered completely. Its empire was dismantled, its ships burned, its treasury emptied. Hannibal survived, but his heart was crushed. He was hailed as a traitor by his enemies, and a scapegoat by his own city. The man who once shook Rome now lived under its shadow. Yet Rome still feared him. In defeat, Hannibal became a politician, reforming Carthage's economy. He restored its strength so efficiently that Rome grew nervous again. Soon, Roman envoys demanded his exile. He fled across the eastern world, from Tyre to Antioch, from Crete to Bithynia. Everywhere he went, kings sought his counsel. His legend grew even in exile, but Rome never forgot him. They hunted him across the seas, demanding his capture. Hannibal refused to be paraded in chains before the republic he had nearly destroyed. When the Romans closed in, he drank poison. As the venom took hold, he whispered, "Let us free Rome from her long anxiety." And with that, the greatest enemy of Rome was gone. Centuries passed, but Hannibal's name never faded. Roman mothers frightened their children with his name. "Hannibal at portas," they whispered. "Hannibal is at the gates." Even in victory, Rome could not forget the terror he brought. For Hannibal had shown them their mortality. He proved Rome could bleed. Historians across ages studied his tactics: the ambush at Trasimene, the trap at Cannae. His strategies became the foundation of modern warfare. Generals like Napoleon, Clausewitz, and Patton would later revere him. They called him the master of maneuver, the father of strategy. He was a man centuries ahead of his time. His enemies became his students. Yet his story was more than just war. It was about pride, destiny, and tragedy. A man who fought against the greatest power on earth and nearly won. A symbol of defiance that no defeat could erase. Even Rome, in its arrogance, built statues of its old foe, because they knew they would never see his like again. In the centuries that followed, Rome rose to unmatched glory. It conquered the Mediterranean, ruled the world, and called itself eternal. But deep in the archives, historians wrote of the one who had almost destroyed it. Hannibal's name was spoken with awe, not hatred. Even Rome's generals admitted without Hannibal, Rome would never have become stronger. He was their crucible. The wars had taught Rome discipline, resilience, and strategy. Hannibal's fire had forged a sharper sword. In this way, the man who swore to destroy Rome had, in a strange twist of fate, helped build its empire. His defeat became Rome's greatest lesson. The enemy had become the teacher. History's irony was complete. But beyond politics and empires, Hannibal's story lingered as something deeper, a tale of vision and vengeance, a reminder that even the mightiest powers can be humbled by one brilliant mind. That courage, when guided by genius, can shake the world, and that true greatness is not in victory, but in the struggle itself. Hannibal embodied that truth. Today, over 2,000 years later, Hannibal's march still echoes through history. From the Alps to Cannae, his ghost walks the old battlefields. Historians debate his choices, soldiers study his tactics, and storytellers revive his legend. He remains the symbol of defiance against impossible odds, the man who made the unbreakable republic tremble, the shadow that even Rome could not erase. In the end, Hannibal Barca was not just Carthage's son, he was humanity's eternal warrior. A reminder that one mind armed with will and vision can change the course of history. He fought not for greed, but for vengeance, for honor, for destiny. And though he lost his war, he won immortality, because true greatness is not measured by victory, but by the enemies who still fear your name. As Rome's empire fell centuries later, some said it was poetic justice, that perhaps in the whispers of fate, Hannibal had his revenge. For every empire, no matter how mighty, meets its end. But legends never die, and among them all, one name stands above the rest. Hannibal Barca, the greatest enemy Rome has ever faced.